Can we get started?
Yep.
Sure.
We're at the bottom of the hour, and we're super excited today to be talking a bit about Viva Desktop, and we'll talk a little bit about what we mean when we say Viva Desktop in a moment. And we're super thrilled to have Bob German as a guest speaker today. So we're going to talk a little bit about how Viva Connections and your intranet work together. Derek, you just want to advance. I think most of the folks on the call know a little bit about our team. I think there's a build in there, Derek, too. Yep, just the fact that we bring different roles and different points of view to bear against all of these technology questions. So I think this week will primarily be Derek and Julie leading us with a lot of Bob in there, and but Mark and Todd and I will be here to sing harmony as well. And we miss Emily. We miss Emily as well. Emily's taking a leave of absence for a while. So you've got the five of us today with special guest star Bob.
Well, I love this picture.
So we're going to talk about Viva Desktop and your intranet. Derek, I know we were kicking around why do we say Viva Desktop instead of Viva Connections? And Julie, I think you had a pretty well-reasoned thought on that.
Well, because we're talking about specifically Viva Desktop being the new name for the home site app that was sort of announced. And so if we go one further, I can talk to that a little bit more. So Viva Connections in general is currently, and may not always be, but currently is just not a SKU that you buy, right? It's just more of a marketing term that is a collection of functionality. So Viva Desktop is one of those pieces of functionality that's sort of rolled out. And by sort of, I mean that it is available for you to enable in your tenant with some PowerShell, and we'll let our PowerShell person talk. Look at the happy face. PowerShell, yay, it's me.
Yay.
So like I said, Viva Desktop is formerly what was called the home site app. And so it's that ability, and if you see the screenshot that we have there with the icon in Teams, and then the full page view of your SharePoint site that you have made a home site. And so basically, Viva Desktop is an ability to get that, what is actually a personal app, but it's a very special personal app. So that personal app gets in your Teams rail as an icon, yep. And you also then get an extra menu, and we'll sort of talk to that, that comes from the global nav from the site that you made your home site, as well as links for my sites and my news. So that's a special extra menu that you get. The other features that you're going to get is a new page layout, which is not out at all yet, called the dashboard page layout. Now, the dashboard page layout will be a special kind of page that you can create for when it does come out. You will only be able to create one, but potentially maybe you'll be able to create more in the future for things like audience targeting. That's really not, there's no specific information about that. It's just sort of what we think might happen there. So there's going to be a dashboard page layout type, and that dashboard page layout is going to allow you to configure what we call active card extensions, or ACEs. You can build those ACEs with the SharePoint framework, or there are going to be some out-of-the-box ones. And then you will also have what's called a dashboard web part, and that dashboard web part will then display that dashboard page that's in that same site collection anywhere where you put that dashboard web part. And you can see in the screenshot there on the right, down to the right side, you can see the dashboard. Yep, excellent pointing. Thank you, Derek. You can see that dashboard section, and there's a bunch of ACEs that are in there. And basically, that's just one web part that is surfacing responsively the dashboard page that is also in the site pages library. And so, as I mentioned, the SharePoint Framework 1.13, which isn't released yet, but it is in private preview still, although should be released soon, next month or two, has that ability to build these ACEs, but currently, because there's no way to surface them, that dashboard page is not available in any tenants unless you're part of the private preview. You can't really do anything with it. So yes, you could build them in 1.13 when that comes out, but you can't really play with them much other than in the developer the developer dashboard. When you're playing with gulp serving locally, you can play with your web parts or whatever and put them on a page, but you can't really put them in your tenant anywhere. So that doesn't particularly help you get going. So we're going to kind of have to wait for that dashboard page layout. And then the ACEs themselves, these adaptive card extensions, are platform agnostic, and they're also fully responsive. So they play nicely on the page wherever you put them.
Yep.
And that should say adaptive, not active.
Adaptive.
Yeah, I'm like, why does that say that? So that's a mistake. I can fix that. Anyway, so next slide, I think.
Yep. And I think, Julie, this is the ACEs, the adaptive card extensions. This is the extension point for Viva connections. So
Right.
There's nothing else that we've seen on the horizon as part of Viva that has an extension point except for this.
Right. Right. Cue Todd.
Cue Todd. Yeah.
So they were kind enough to put the slide in for me so that I would have something at all to mention. So to set all this up, are there links on the slide to that?
Yeah, the
article?
link is on the last page. And
Okay.
actually, I'll put it in the chat right now.
Okay. Yeah. So to get all this set up, there's some configuring that needs to be done. And Microsoft has lovingly provided a PowerShell script to do that. I read through it. It's a pretty solid script, and I'm sure that Microsoft feels very relieved that I've given it my seal of approval. But one of the things to keep in mind is when Julie ran, she had some frustration, not because she can't run PowerShell, but because it almost made it too easy. So what this PowerShell does is it asks you some questions, asks you, files, images, and things like that, and then it packages up the thing that you need to upload for you. It just takes all your answers, generates some JSON, and then zips some files up for you to upload. So if you look at that PowerShell script and scroll all the way to the bottom, kind of like reading the last page of a book first, you can see what that blob is going to look like and what it does. And if you're at Julie's level, you can just cobble it together. I think it probably would have taken Julie half as much time if she had just done that.
I think that's a valid statement. Bob, did you have any problems when you did it?
No, I don't know if I did it exactly the same, but what I found was that there's a little bit of prep before you do the PowerShell part, it seems like. And this was in my case as I started to do this in my developer tenant, and I was like, oh, okay, you really kind of need to have a home site, and you really kind of need to have global navigation turned on the home site. I mean, if you want a blank little flyout with no information on it, if that's useful to people, then you could do it without those things. But really, you kind of need to have those things. So what I found myself doing was switching from my developer tenant to where it's just kind of a little chaos of every little project that I've worked on, and over to a demo tenant that had a nice landing page like the one you're showing. In fact,
Which is what I did.
really similar, really similar. And
Maybe we used the lookbook. Did we
maybe
use the
we
lookbook?
used the same one. And anyway, it's slightly different. But anyway, that I would say that if someone's thinking about this, like really the value for users is, I think, substantial in that it's bringing the intranet into Teams in a way that is much richer than we could do by pasting a SharePoint page into a personal app. You can actually demo the difference if you want to see that. And
Sure.
It's it doesn't work with classic pages. So if you just did a big migration and all your pages are still in classic mode, so that's where I feel like if you're some Praxis client, you've probably already got everything modern, everything. You've got a home site, you've got your global nav, you've got a wonderful information architecture, and it's going to be just running these PowerShell scripts. But I think not everybody's necessarily in that situation. Was my thought on it. And the other thing I thought was neat is that the PowerShell script actually generates a Teams app that you then upload into Teams.
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. At least for me as a developer, I was like, oh, that's nice. So it is kind of interesting the way it works. They say that it will, it lets you look inside. That way you can kind of look inside the app and see what's going on. They say there will be a button to do this someday in the admin console.
An easy button to. I
Yeah.
think anything that means you don't get to run PowerShell is sad. So hopefully you don't have to press the easy button. You can still keep running the PowerShell.
You can always use PowerShell.
Cool.
So anyway,
Yeah,
but
that,
it was
and
pretty straightforward. Other than that, I thought, and I do
Yeah.
like the idea of it.
I think I just got messed up because I pasted URLs wrong or something. I don't know. I struggled with it a little. Like I ran it 3 times, and the 4th time it finally actually made the thing and let me keep going. So I don't know what was going on. Maybe I tried to do it too quick. I got a little lost. I put the screenshot. You can see the menu that flies out. I'm like, what's the who we are? What's happening? Find it. My SharePoint. I'm like clicking on all of them. I'm like, where do these things come from? And then I realized, oh, it's the global nav, and you can see on the bigger screenshot that it's those 3 links across the top. And since I didn't set them to anything, they don't go anywhere. So that's why when I'm clicking on them, they're not doing anything. So the top section is the global nav, then my sites below that, and then below that is my news. And it's very akin to what you get on the SharePoint home page. And so that's, it's I agree with you. I think from a user experience perspective, it's sort of bringing, a lot of people, if we remember back, or if we harken back to the days when Modern first came out, there was that SharePoint homepage, and they're like, this is where you should start your intranet. And people are like, no, I have a homepage. I want them to start on my homepage, but I want that stuff and I want it on my homepage. So I think this is finally the answer to the stuff that's on SharePoint homepage brought into the home page of your intranet, and sort of tying those things finally together.
Right, but you can still have the branding and everything that you want.
Right. And we've been working in teams so much. For us, we work in teams all the time, but for a lot of folks working remotely in teams, they're spending more time in teams these days in meetings and in collaboration, that it's crossing that boundary between the intranet and teams, that sort of publishing model versus that collaboration model.
Yeah, I'm wondering how, I think we're seeing a little bit of a trend where we're seeing, we have traditionally, right, everyone builds their SharePoint intranet, and that is where everybody kind of goes to collaborate and do the work. And I think we're starting to see a trend that some organizations are starting to use Teams first. Like Teams is the place where they're sort of staying to do all their work, and the SharePoint intranet is sort of the background piece of that. And so there was then this disconnect, right? Because you're missing that way that you can push communications to people, right? Like the whole idea of a communication site versus a team site. Well, the team sites definitely don't really need to be surfaced mostly. It depends how you use them, of course, but that could be in Teams, and that doesn't really break the model. But what was sort of broken with the Teams first as your place where you start your day is that communication things, those news things, and those other things that you would push to your users had no home anymore because people weren't going there. So this sort of bridges that gap and allows you to use the Teams app as your sort of one-stop shopping for everything. Of course, that assumes you're not using Outlook anymore for email, I guess.
I once
put
Outlook. I once made Outlook. I shouldn't say this, but I put Outlook into Teams as an app once. The web-based Outlook, just as a hoot. Actually, somebody on the SharePoint product team asked me if it could be done, and I took it as a challenge. I don't really recommend it. It was really confusing, but because how many levels of navigation can you have? But another data point on this, or another use case I think for this, that's not going to be evident right away, because this doesn't work on mobile yet. But when it starts working on mobile, which they're saying it will, I've noticed a trend where people are putting their first line workers onto Teams, and that's the whole thing. Now I remember, actually, Derek and Julie may remember back some projects we did for companies that, and you may have done others, where you built a mobile app for a company that wanted basically to say, hey, we hire lots of frontline workers. They don't have desktops. And so we're going to build a branded app with our, company, with every tool, every piece of information that an employee would need, that they can just install on their own phone so that they can do the basic things. And you had to have really deep pockets to build that from scratch. So what's happening now is people are using Teams in that respect. So they're buying the cheapest license, which is an F1 license, I think, for frontline workers. They get Teams is included in that, as well as SharePoint. And then they're putting Teams apps into Teams and basically telling each employee, go install Teams. They can put a little bit of branding in there. And they can put their apps, their shifts is the shift management. There's a time clock aspect that's also built into Teams already. So, you're getting the ability to talk to your teammates, schedule your shifts. If something happens, maybe you're working in a restaurant somewhere and there's something, the freezer breaks and you need to let everybody know what's happening. You could do that just in Teams native. So what's missing?
Yeah.
Oh, the intranet. How do we get news out to these people? How do we do? And we had that SharePoint connector, but that wasn't, the problem with that is that if a news story comes and then everybody reacts to it and comments, the news story's scrolled off the top long ago, right? So this seems like a really nice way of providing an all-in-one experience for frontline workers once it comes out in mobile.
I totally agree with that.
Yep.
So on that note, Derek, let's talk
Yes.
about how we can maybe build our own things.
You mean this?
Yes, I do mean that.
Okay, so let me just start out by saying this is a project that that sort of came my way through Bob. Bob was, Bob works, well, we all work with a really geographically diverse team, and we came up with sort of a big use case here. What time is it for a geographically dispersed team? Like, what time is it for any individual team member? And then how do I find a time to meet with those people? And so Julie and I pulled together an application. This is a personal app. Let me actually start the video. This is a personal app that lives inside of Teams, and you can get it over here on the left-hand rail. And what it does is when it loads, the first time as the personal app, it pulls together the people that you're connected with in the graph, as well as people in your Outlook contacts list. And it sort of pulls them all in. And then it displays them in little time cards based on each person's location. So we've got Jamie in Alaska, we've got Evan in New York, we've got me in Iceland, we've got Stefan in Vienna, and Alex in Guam. And so this is a pretty geographically dispersed team, and it lets you know exactly what time it is. So
Derek?
Yes.
Is Thor Ironsides your screen name?
Yes.
Do not Google that, by the way.
Voice of experience.
Some things you can't unsee.
Tried that, did you?
Yep. All right. So excuse me. Initially, that loads in those, sort of 20 people. You also can add anybody from Active Directory. So here we're going to come in and we're going to search for somebody. We're going to search for Jane, who's in Australia. And you can add anybody, as I said, in AD. You can also set her location. The personal app nobody has access to get into your personal app. So you need to set this for those individual people, for each person in your list. But you can pull them in. It also lets you do people that are, external or in your contacts, like I said. You can also delete users. You can also set people's personal working hours. So if you know for a fact that, Jane works, she takes Fridays off, but works on Sundays, you can come in here and you can set that up so that it's, so that it's specific to her and specific to your interactions with them. So we're going to just come in here and you can click all the different dots. And I couldn't figure out how to speed up this part of the video. So I'm just going to talk for another 2 seconds while this finishes up. And then we click the save button. And now you can actually go in and you can actually get an accurate representation of what Jane's hours are. And apparently I decided to save her address twice, or her location twice. And now you can see Jane is listed in there. We added an extra tile. So it's responsive. So it just pushed the last person, Alex, off the edge. So you can toggle between all of your different time zones depending on how big things are and how many people you are. You can also create different views. So imagine I'm a manager and I want to create a view of my direct reports. So I can just come in here, give the view a title. If I had 100 people in here, I could actually filter. But in this instance, I'm really just going to check off myself, Evan, Rowan, and Stefan. We'll throw Thor in there too, and then click the save button. And now I've got a view that's filtered just to those people. So now if I want to, we're going to hit the second part, right? I need to schedule a meeting with these people. So I want to figure out what time sucks less. And that's really my guiding principle when trying to schedule meetings, like what time sucks less for everybody. So we've got a list here of the time based on those people's current time zones and their working hours. And so you can see the green is obviously, their working hours. The yellow is the time that's sort of 2 hours on either end of their working hours. And then the red is like, I'm closed, I'm off time. So we're not working now. So I can look in here and I can see, oops, I don't know what happened, but I think it just restarted the video. Oops. All right. So I can come in here and I can find a time that works for everybody. I can click on it. And then I can click schedule meeting, and this provides a deep link into Teams. So now I can schedule my staff meeting. And I can click send, and now the meeting request goes out. And then it brings me back to the app. So sort of bringing this all the way back around to the Viva Connections part, right? We also built an ACE on top of this. So this is the same, it's running on the same code base. You can see that default view. Instead of the cards, we've got the little icons and the individual people. And you can toggle through the different views and click schedule the meeting, and this can open Teams and then bring you over to the Teams app to schedule the meeting just like you would if you were in Teams. And so you can start to see at this point sort of where the different connection points, you can build something, it can be in Teams, you can use it as an ACE, and then you can sort of hit multiple venues, multiple applications with the same set of code.
Yeah, and so I think that's super important, right? Because what that then brings is a way to take in your home site. You can now, when we get that desktop page layout type, dashboard page layout type, and we can start making our own custom ACEs that give people bits of functionality right where they are. That then takes these big monolithic apps that we might need to build, and they're super useful and that's great, but it brings little bits of that component to the user where they are. Like, I need to fill out an expense report, I need to do whatever it is that you need to do, and you can build these extensions off of many different applications you might have in your organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be a solution that's built on top of with the SharePoint framework on top of Microsoft 365 like we're showing here. It could be that you have some third-party app, and that third-party app has an API, and you're going to build an ACE with a little bit of functionality that does some things for that third-party app that you might have. So I think this becomes a powerful way to expand your intranet and add functionality for users right where they are, right where they need it. So that's, I think, a pretty powerful thing. And so one more thing, sorry, hold on one more second. And then the one more thing I wanted to bring up that Derek was showing, the personal app. This particular app is also a Teams tab app. So you can add it as a personal app to manage your own personal team, but you could also add it to a team as a Teams tab to help manage that team of people. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
To further what you were saying, Julie, I think today Microsoft announced both the developer preview of Viva Connections and a bunch of third-party connectors to tools like ServiceNow, Workday, et cetera, to let you build that kind of extension into your intranet right away. So I added that to the resources slide about that announcement. That came today at Inspire. I don't know if everybody saw it or not.
Oh, no, I did not see it.
No, I didn't.
Is that an available right now or coming soon to a theater near us?
I think the developer preview, it looked like was immediate availability, but I think there are some dependencies that Julie mentioned about SPFX version 1.13, which is later this month. Is that correct?
Yeah, and dashboard the dashboard page layout is not coming real soon. So the ability to put these aces on a page is later. So like I was saying when we were on that slide, yeah, you know, SharePoint Framework 1.13 might drop in the next month or so. And so, yeah, you can build these aces, but then you don't have any place that you can put them yet. And so that is the sort of delay that is kind of a problem. So I just shared the link in the chat too. So this solution that Derek and I built is publicly available along with two others that we're not talking about today, but I shared the link in the chat. It is built on the SharePoint Framework 1.13, but does run in a tenant that doesn't have the dashboard solution. So you can, if you want to try this out in your own tenant or your own developer tenant, you can download the built SPPKG file, which is the SharePoint Framework solution. You can download just the pre-built one, and you can deploy it in your dev tenant or whatever to try it out. And you will be able to get the personal app, because you can do the sync to Teams. There's instructions and everything, but you have the personal app and you would have the Teams tab app. So you could try it out today. You wouldn't be, even though the aces are already in there, you wouldn't be able to use them anywhere, but they are actually in the package itself. So.
And that's
okay. Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
And actually, yeah, I pulled up thanks for the heads up on that. I pulled up the press release from Microsoft and pasted it into the chat as well. They're saying by the end of July, the public beta will be. So it's not immediate. They just
soonish.
Like at Build they announced it, and at Ignite they announced that they're gonna do it. They're still gonna do it, I guess, but it's still not there until the end of July. Any minute now.
No, really, we mean it.
So we'll look for that on July 37th, I believe.
Yeah, I just don't know
At
that.
midnight.
My problem with it is that I know that they're saying that, but I don't know how they're going to get bits enabled in. Yeah, we'll see how that works. Yeah. No clue. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out, I guess.
So a little more demo-y and overview-y this week, and a little less dialogue and Q&A. But I think we folks are pretty proud. We built some cool stuff with some great technical direction from Bob. If there are any questions, we'll hold the chat open.
I didn't do that
for a while.
much. I did a really bad prototype, and these guys did a fabulous
You commissioned
job.
the project.
That's important, Bob. You gotta
you're
have
a patron.
If you did
of
something
the
that
It was really ugly, but people kind of liked it because they needed a world clock so bad, and then
we need an ideas guy.
the real developers and designers came in and made it happen. You guys are great.
So as we approach the top of the hour, the resources slide, we're going to post this up along with the recording, the video, the deck. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk a little bit more depth about Viva topics. So we did kind of a Viva overview. I've been working on a pilot of Viva topics for the last couple of months. We've been piloting it and playing with it internally at Simpraxis. So we've got some lessons learned so far and some things to be looking out for in a couple of weeks. Anybody have anything else to add?
I do not.
So we'd say go check out that developer preview. If you want to download the solution repo that Julie posted up there, by all means have at it. If you want a broader overview, there's a few Viva Connections overviews, and Sue's article's really good about it as well.
Yep. I think that's what we got. Awesome.
Right. Awesome.
Thanks for everybody for joining today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for joining, Bob.
Thanks for having me.
For everything.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.